Welcome back to another episode of the Downsizing Roadmap podcast with your hosts, Jody Roscoe and Heather Fisher. We're talking about all things downsizing, from our own experiences with clients to guest experts. Let's make downsizing easier, one conversation at a time.
Welcome to Downsizing Roadmap podcast, 7 signs that your parents need help at home. This is a downsizing guide for those adult children.
Yeah, this is hard because sometimes you aren't in their house a lot if you don't live close and you don't know what's going on. I think this happens a lot in, the holidays. It's like go home and then wait, what's going on and is it okay or is it not okay? And it might be okay, but just questions on what it looks like and whether it should be a concern or not, right?
Yeah, I think even if you're living close and over there frequently, these will be some good things you can just have in your mind to watch out for. And we'll talk about when they're just a normal part of life as we get older, and maybe some red flags as to when it might be that tipping point of something to warrant some extra conversations around or some solutions.
Perfect.
Yeah, so the first sign you might see is a dimming environment and lighting shifts, meaning, the house is darker, they're not opening all the blinds and curtains, maybe not turning on all the lights and just becoming more comfortable living in the house a little darker. And your first thought might be, what's going on? Is this depression? Is this,
right,
a sign that they're just not engaging in the day? And actually why it happens, or what it could mean is just natural eye changes as we age. The retinas become more sensitive to light, and it is literally just more comfortable to not have those bright lights and to prefer a dimmer room, to not have that sensitivity.
That's so interesting to me because, as real estate agents, we walk into people's houses often, and sometimes they just don't have any lights on, and it's daytime, but it's still dark to me in the house. And it just, I wasn't making judgments about whether they were depressed or not. I was just kind of thinking, like, why don't they turn on the light? Because I could use some light. And, or I like light. I like sunlight. I like daylight, all of that. Why are their blinds pulled or whatever? And it didn't occur to me that, that light might be harsh for their eyes, or, it didn't occur to me. So that's interesting.
Yeah. Some other reasons why you might notice this is just a simple fact, like light bulbs need changed and they're too high to reach, and ladders aren't feeling safe. And so they're just kind of avoiding that. So when it might be an actual concern is if by not having those lights on, it's leading to other safety concerns.
Tripping, falling.
Yeah, shadowy places that become obstacles, not being able to read their medication bottles, other things that are the lack of light is affecting their day-to-day in other ways.
Yeah, maybe not being able to clean properly or whatever. So so how to approach it. So don't walk in and be like, it's a cave in here, it's so dark, what's the problem? Right? So maybe just focus on the practical, barriers and frame it like helpful. Hey, Dad, I noticed that light was out. Do you need me to change it? Those kind of things.
Yep. Just kind of jumping in and taking the reins and making that happen.
Yeah, I think that high light bulbs are actually a big problem. They're a problem for me even.
Nothing to do with age. They're just
they're just hard.
Yeah, hard for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, another thing you might notice is the evolving mail stack and paperwork piles.
Yeah, we see this a lot where there's just piles of paper, maybe not, on the kitchen counter, but also maybe next to the couch or, kind of all over. It's starting to be just piles. Bills are mixed with, coupons and all kinds of stuff.
Advertisements.
Like, this was my mom's house, honestly. This was, important documents were mixed with junk mail. And so, yeah.
Yeah, I think our first instinct can sometimes be, that they're not capable of handling their bills or their finances, or they just don't care, or just a feeling of frustration of why aren't you just handling this? But what it might actually be is just that constant decision fatigue of deciding on each piece of mail that comes in, paired alongside a different energy level, and being able to accomplish everything in a day that you did at a younger age, it does become a bit of a ranking system of what the important tasks are to get done. And so this is one that may get delayed and pile up.
Yeah, and a lot of times there's a lot of like medical mail, and you're not sure, what to do with that. There's just so much junk mail, and sometimes, like you said, they don't spend the time to think about if it's important or not. It just kind of goes all together in the "I will deal with that later" pile.
Yeah.
Because for me, I mean, junk mail just doesn't even come in anymore. Like, I sort through it on my walk back up the driveway and it's gone. So it doesn't even come in the house. But that's not, maybe practical for what's going on with your parents. So,
Yeah. So when concern might be warranted, if it's just, normal mess and piles, that can be handled. But if you're noticing late notices or unopened envelopes from important financial institutions, things like that, you want to make sure you find a solution to help so that things don't create bigger problems.
yeah, missed bills being paid, or if you see, any kind of predatory things, like you're getting a bunch of thank you notes from charities, like, figuring out what might be happening, whether that was a legitimate gift or whether there may be some predatory things happening, unfortunately.
Yeah, we had a family member, that was, getting confused by the mail she was receiving that was more solicitations, but it was worded in such a way that it felt like it was true financial things she needed to do. And so that was definitely causing a problem. And like you said, the charity giving, we were noticing the stacks of free calendars and things like, okay, something's going on here that needs to be dug into further.
Yeah. And so instead of like, hey, Mom, why are you giving me all that money? Again, it's, just, hey, I noticed there's some papers and I get overwhelmed by it. Let's sit down together and just, get the recycling bin and go through this stuff, get rid of all the stuff that's not important so you can see what is important. Kind of just everything needs to just come from a helpful kind of way. And I, as an adult child, I get that can be hard sometimes because you can, have some frustration around it and gosh, why is it like this? But it doesn't really matter, why. It's just, it is. And so, helping go through it is what they need as help. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So another thing to notice in our list of 7 signs, the changing kitchen. What does that look like? Is there, expired food, an empty refrigerator, signs that, a full cleanup after a meal is more difficult and maybe not happening? Some things you might notice in the kitchen.
Yeah, maybe there's duplicates of things, like they bought it and then they bought the next one and didn't really use up stuff. So, I mean, grocery cooking for 1 or 2 is hard. Like that, figuring out grocery shopping and then cooking, you end up, people used to cook for the whole family, having it or quartering it and trying to make, a quarter of a lasagna is a weird thing, right?
Yeah.
So it's different to calibrate, how much food they need sometimes. And when you get older, you aren't as hungry, you don't eat as much. So I think sometimes it can, just be that, and duplicates happen because it's hard to remember what's at home, and sometimes we do that ourselves. So that's not automatically mean that there's a problem.
Yeah, it's just jumping in for that assistance. If you are finding moldy or spoiled food or things that would affect their health and nutrition, those are the red flags that maybe it's time to have conversations around a community that's assisting with meals, or someone coming in to the home for those meal times to help with preparation and cleanup and making sure that, the meals are being had and that they're nutritious enough to maintain health.
Yeah, that's, I think, something that you would definitely want to kind of act on. If they have cans of food from, 10 years ago, I mean, not that they should eat it, but I think that's more of a sign of, scarcity and not wasting and just kind of keeping things and never really going through and checking the dates of things because, there was a whole generational thing about scarcity and not enough food and all of that. So I wouldn't be as worried about those kind of things. Obviously, let's go through the pantry, Mom. Let's get rid of the expired things. But yeah, if food is going bad and you feel like they're not eating properly and all of that, then that's the red flags.
Yeah, and again, offering to help with that clean out of the pantry or the fridge together in that kind and patient way.
Yep. Okay, number 4, the shrinking floor plan and narrow walking paths. So if you're seeing this, it's often just the physical manifestation of all the things that they have accumulated and possibly that they have gotten from, their parents. They get their parents' stuff. They get all of the things. They're the keeper of the things. And that just, narrows their space if they're trying to keep it. Yeah. Everything
in, nothing out.
Yep. So they hold on to furniture. They think, things used to be expensive, so they keep things because it must have value because it was expensive at one time, or they feel bad getting rid of it. Everything has memories. There's all kinds of reasons. But yes, thoughts in, none out.
Yeah, and mobility changes, and there may be a layer where they've added a cane or a walker or other assistance for that, but the home has not been looked at for, how can you make just a little more walking room for that. I know when my dad was on a walker at home, just takes a little more room than you've needed for years to navigate through spaces and around furniture. So just making sure that that's accounted for and, how can you clear that path?
Yeah, and I think, mobility, since mobility has changed, that also is moving things around, and sometimes that can just sound exhausting and like I just can't deal with physically moving things, and they don't ask because I think we get a lot of like, I don't want to bother anybody, I'm not going to ask. Yeah, we're okay. And so I think that's something to just think about. Any kind of heavy furniture, anything that would just be physically exhausting. So maybe there are things that they could let go, they just don't because they're not thinking about it. They've just learned to move around it, or
not sure logistically how to get that out of the space.
Right. So maybe that's the thing we offer. If there's major tripping hazards, if they're falling, if there's extension cords that are going across places that could cause problems, or curled area rugs or those kind of things, that's the kind of stuff that is more red flag stuff that you're going to want to look at. And there are companies that will come and help you figure out exactly, how to make a house safer. And so if that's something that you think might need to happen, that's not only removing rugs and those kind of trip hazards and stuff, that maybe that there's some grab bars that need to go in or something along those lines. But you just want to make sure, hey, Mom, I want to make sure you have plenty of room to move around. Can I move some of these things for you? And
Yeah, for sure. Okay, number 5, the unused rooms and vertical retreat. This is when, your parents may be in a multi-story house, a basement and a 2-story home, or some combination thereof. And what you're noticing is that they're only living in that main level. They're not going upstairs to extra bedrooms or down to the basement to get things down there. And, they've just kind of retreated into that one main living space.
Yeah, you'll notice that the temperature changes dramatically, upstairs possibly, or the air feels stale, or rooms are dusty and doors firmly shut. And they're clearly not using it, not going in there, treating it like it's a little maybe time capsule. Maybe it's your room. Maybe it's the time capsule of your room, from high school or whatever that looks like. We have definitely walked into houses that were like that.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Yeah, we have seen that
Yes.
To the extreme in a few houses.
Yes.
And I mean, some ways it's, such a
Sweet.
Nostalgia sweet thing, and other things it's like, oh my
Sad.
gosh, you haven't been able to use this
Yeah.
space for anything all these years.
Yeah, somehow sweet, somehow sad. There's a little bit of all of it. But so Yeah, so over time, they just maybe they don't need all the space, or they can't get to it. There's different things, and they don't know what to do with it. So sometimes the rooms also become like more store rooms, like they kind of turn into more heirlooms, things that they've got from whoever, and they just kind of tuck it in a room, then shut the door. Yeah, so that doesn't, automatically mean that they're failing to manage their house, or, that they're just prioritizing their daily energy for the spaces that they're actually using, and they're just kind of out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah, I think that happens a lot, especially with basements,
Mm-hmm.
where things go to be forgotten about.
Yeah, like mine. So we're going to work on that.
Yeah. So when concern might be warranted, if they're still attempting to go upstairs, maybe, or downstairs to laundry, things like that, if it's still needed for something, but it's difficult, that's the conversation. Do we need to move to something that everything you need is literally on one floor, or within a community that you can get around? If they're, putting off doing laundry because they can't easily get it up and down the steps to do it, that's something that a new solution needs put in place to help with that.
Yeah, that's just, it's really a clear indicator that the house their lifestyle has outgrown the house, right?
Yeah,
At
not
some point
working.
it was fine. It's not fine anymore.
Yeah, this is the perfect entry point for a larger forward-thinking conversation about downsizing. And, you have all these rooms that you're not using. What would it look like to have that right size home for you? And what does that look like? And back, honestly, to our first step, dream
Get
it.
dreamy.
Yeah, get dreamy about what it could look like instead, without trying to manage spaces that you're not even utilizing.
Because again, that is an emotional, tax on you, on them. Even if they're, just think, oh, I don't even go up there and use it. They still think about it. Like, they just know that space is there, and they're not really taking care of it. Same thing if, the house is overpacked with things that causes anxiety. It's scientific facts that that's the case. And so I think people they'll say they're fine because they don't realize how heavy it is on them until they've freed themselves of it. And that's why whenever we talk to people, they're like, oh my gosh, I just feel so much lighter. I just feel so much freer, because you have just been living with that weight on you that you don't realize that is there.
Yeah, not handling things can be just as exhausting as the physical part of handling them.
Yeah. And mentally, it does take a toll on us, whether we realize it or not. So, yeah.
For sure.
Okay, signs of deferred property maintenance. We see this a lot, where the house does just kind of get to be too much. And so things start looking and being worn down, right? So you walk up the driveway, probably there might be some peeling paint on the windowsills, the gutter might be off, the roof might be looking a little rough, landscaping often suffers. It just starts to feel like, okay, things aren't really fully being taken care of, overgrown shrubs.
Yeah, home maintenance is physically demanding and can be a financial burden. It can be expensive, and incomes might have shifted to, more of a fixed income situation, and your daily energy level for those tasks that are needed, cooking and basic cleaning and hygiene. If that's taking all of your energy, those maintenance items are going to be one of the first to go.
Well, and I think there's a couple other things. I think there's, if it's not broke, don't fix it kind of mentality, where, that generation thought process is, we're not going to spend money on things that unless they really need it, number one. And number two, they don't know who can come and fix it if they can't physically do that, and they don't want people in their house that they feel like they might not be safe, or, whatever. So there's all kinds of pieces that go into what could make deferred maintenance happen. And sometimes people just don't notice. We live in a house, we get used to what it is, we don't pay attention. The window got cracked, 5 years ago, and we just don't look at it anymore.
Yeah. Back to those spaces we don't use. We might not even be in those spaces to see some of those things.
Yeah, right. And you just become blind to stuff that, I'd say, like, in our old house, Mark put in a new shower head, and I know I've told this story, but, and he had to kind of redo the wall, and so it was a brown color, I think, and it had, the drywall paste what stuff on it, and it stayed like that for like 8 years until we moved, and I painted it right before we moved, and I just stopped looking at it, and I took a shower in that shower like every day, and so you just do get blind to stuff, and when it's like that, that is not necessarily a red flag, but if there is things that are broken, plumbing things, leaking things, the HVAC is not working properly, and they don't seem to be, worried about mold, any of those kind of things, that can be problematic red flags.
Yeah, I think we also, I know this has happened to me, but you don't realize how much time has gone by on some of the routine service things.
Yeah.
And you don't realize that you haven't looked at something in quite a while or had someone out to repair it.
Yeah, and so I think in helping, you can just find a handyman that's, either do it yourself if you're handy, or find a handyman that is, trustworthy, and just get that scheduled. Just be like, hey, Mom, I saw that this was, let me find somebody to help you fix that, whatever.
Yeah, I think there's a comfort level in being there for those appointments.
Yeah, for sure.
If that's wanted, just to help handle it when they come out.
Yeah, I mean, we had a window cleaners come one time, and the guys were scary, and I was young, and I was like, I had to call my friend over to come and sit with me because I didn't, and I was fine, but like it just felt like, people were in my house, and I didn't like the feeling of it. So
yeah, absolutely, I understand that.
Okay. Last one.
Yeah, this is an important one. Isolation and the outdated tech gap. So I think that isolation, you'll notice, their world is shrinking down to not even just one level of the house, but one room, one chair. They're, spending their day, just their routine is so much of the same thing all day, no longer doing social activities, no longer just out and about talking with the neighbors outside, things like that, just very isolated down to, the same thing day after day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And they didn't grow up with technology like we did. And so it makes it hard for them to use digital technology. Maybe they're, they have an iPad, but it's like the original one, and it, hardly works on things. And as long as that works, if they have a flip phone and that works for them, and a paper calendar, that's fine. Like, they don't have to, be up on the, things. And it's funny because my mom was not. She was never going to learn that. Like, she was absolutely, mental block, could not absolutely do it. My Nana, was on Facebook. She was in her 90s. She's on Facebook. She's, texting me. She's doing all the things. So it just depends on who they are and what their, personality is and what their technology thought process is, all of those things, aptitude. So it's not necessarily a problem. But if they're missing their medical appointments and things, they don't understand how to answer the cell, their cell phone, and that's what, all they're getting calls on, like there can be problems there.
Yeah, my mom is great on her cell phone, but when my dad had his, they had it on the plan for years, and I think, no one even knew the number, and he didn't know how to use it, and it sat, on a kitchen shelf for 10 years.
Right.
And I don't think he ever learned how to turn it on, and, but we would call my mom's cell phone, and so we would get her on the phone much more often than my dad, and you just have that gap of not answering the phone. And so I do think that's something to be aware of, as we are, the adult kids are much more into texting or just used to that form of communication or keeping up with people on social media, remembering to give those those voice-to-voice phone calls, call the landline if that's what they have. Yeah. Don't let that drag just because it's not up to your day-to-day technology.
Yeah, and they might need to be doing like telehealth things, or they might need to log into things, and you might just have to help them do that, and so just be aware if there's things that are problematic because technology has gotten to a place where they can't do it in a pen and paper kind of a way. They might need a little bit of help with that. But if they're showing deep signs of loneliness, like they don't like to do anything that they used to do anymore, and they don't, want to do their hobbies, or they don't want to decorate for Christmas, which they used to love, or something like that, those are the more red flags. Not being able to, keep up with technology on its own, not necessarily, or, but they might need some help with some of that stuff. Get their grandkids to do it because they know everything.
Yeah, they do. Although,
and they might have a little more patience.
Yeah, I think watching my young grandkids, even at the ages they're at, being able to whip all over an iPad and know exactly how to navigate it, it's crazy.
Yeah.
How our brains have adapted.
But yeah, if you walk into your family home, just to kind of recap, and it feels like there's been a shift and it can feel scary, but the shift may or may not be a problem. So just kind of put that in context and decide, it may not be the way you do it, but is it something that's not, that feels dangerous or like going to be a problem, or is it just, not the way you're doing it?
Yeah, and I think the first layer is how can you help fill those gaps to just help them through some of these changes, realizing that it's all fine and they're not major red flags, but how can you be of assistance so they don't continue to get worse, and then recognizing when there might be some concern to really have deeper conversations about.
And then the approach of it is, it can't be like, you need to do this, or why haven't you done that? It needs to be more like, hey, I noticed that this happened. Can I help with that? Or let me help you handle, whatever. And this is a really tough dynamic. I'm not going to lie about that, because my mom did not want me to, kind of parent her in any way. She was the mom and she wanted to handle it even when she couldn't. And that was hard, and so sometimes this is a shuffle for that. So
yeah, we certainly understand this dynamic, and anything that we can do to help you through those conversations. We help adult kids all the time that are helping their parents navigate that, and we love that. We love to walk alongside you and help get your parents to where they're living their best life and everybody is back to enjoying each other and not stressing over all these logistics. So if we can help with any resources, our website, downsizingroadmap.com, or our free guide for downsizers themselves, or those adult kids can get some good tips from it, downsizingroadmap.com/guide.
Yep. So we'll talk to you next time.
Thanks. Thanks for joining us on the Downsizing Roadmap podcast. If you found this episode helpful, be sure to subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with someone who might need a little downsizing inspiration. Have questions or ideas for future episodes? Reach out to us on our website, www.downsizingroadmap.com. Until next time, let's keep simplifying and moving forward.